Hi friends, it's Timmy. This is the final part to my WMEA presentation. This part is about music performance. Alright, so some glows. um, it took me a while to finally find these connecting points, but I felt like in this draft of it, I was finally able to draw in the connection points between pop music, music composition, and music performance in a way that I really like and I felt like was really honest of me. And looking at all sides of it. Um, and that you'll pretty much hear it when it gets to the presentation point in the video. But pop music affecting my perceptions of performance standards that I was trying to live up to, and how I felt conflicted of like wanting to live up to certain performance standards, but also knowing that this pop music very much influenced my direction into music composition and trying to like rectify those sides to me. And I feel like it's also again like good auditory embodiment of showing how I can literally take like dysphoria actually like as an energy, like trying to face those feelings of dysphoria in some sort of energy and try to apply it somewhere. And through just like the very act of like changing gender expressions, I found that like these sides didn't have to be mutually exclusive and fighting with each other, and that I could recognize how do I put it? That I could recognize kind of like a spectrum in music appreciation and a spectrum of how I can communicate as a performer. Um, so yeah, I like this section. I think it's powerful and direct. I feel like there's good things that I share in it, and I feel like it really shows that performance isn't just an escapist place from your problems, but it actually helps you deal with some pretty serious life problems in very direct and powerful ways. Like music has never been an escapist place for me. It's always been a place where I really grow as a person and develop as a human being. Some growths that I could do with this, I feel like the end to this is very much importance of music education, universality of music education. Um, I wonder if I can have more conclusive statements at the end about queer identity because this is what the presentation is about. So um, I'm also still wondering if this section is a little too bogged down in personal anecdotes. I have mixed feelings about this right now. I might need a little bit more time to think about it. Um, it could totally be okay situationally. I might have mentioned this before in earlier videos, but I submitted a proposal to the 2019 conference in Portland. Um, and honestly, maybe it won't be so bad if if this is like completely self-focused and having a lot of these personal anecdotes in this section, because I'll be introducing myself to a music ed community, like, just aside from like what I know, like around whatever school district I'll be teaching at. So it could totally work. I just need more time to think about it, I guess. Um, I mean, it would also be interesting if this section would change at all if I find myself working more in my field personally with like trans students and seeing if I can ever find like direct examples of music helping them or me trying to be an ally for them. And yeah, I don't know. Um, just more time to think about it. um, Oh, and as I said, I felt like it was a plus that I feel like this really shows that performance isn't something that's escapist, but it helps you directly face your life problems. But I wonder if there should be a direct statement of that somewhere, because I feel like I feel like it's not entirely clear, and I feel like if it was just like explicitly stated that that's kind of the purpose behind this section, I feel like people would see more clarity to it. Yeah, but those are my only growth thoughts on it. Final thoughts before we jump into the presentation. What's so funny about how I've worked and developed this presentation is that I've read it out like so meticulously with detail, and like I get the dialogue like very, very set. And then it's like, this is what you're gonna go off of. And then I kind of like stray away from that once I actually get it to like the presentation itself. And with these parts that I feel like are a little bit more questionable, I just try to go on like instinct when I'm presenting it. And so I was thinking, um, whenever I have an opportunity to get to present this again, maybe I'll put up a whole new video recording when I present it somewhere. And maybe there will be aspects of the dialogue that are changed and that are just like impromptu and just speaking to the audience directly and not going very much like off of what I actually have like written and typed up for a narrative. So um, I keep this presentation pretty fluid, and I definitely just try to be open to bettering it in any way possible. Guys, I hope you really like this series and this presentation. I feel like it has a lot of potential. Again, it's just like that that circular thing of like, what's the one takeaway you want people to get from this? What's the one takeaway you want people to get from this? And just really trying to hone in on that. That's what it's all about, So, hope wherever you are, you're having a lovely day, and let's get to the presentation.
The time period where I had to start facing my transgender identity was my senior year of college, when I was preparing for the concerto aria competition on the Maslenka saxophone concerto. To begin my process, I started experimenting with gender expressions by wearing dresses and gradually changing my pronouns to they, them, theirs. When I wasn't busy performing and studying music, I was doing my best to educate myself about what being trans means. I discovered that I am not a trans woman. From reading psychiatric texts and testaments from patients that are trans women, I figured out that I don't share their narrative. I never had a clear, concise picture of myself within female embodiment. I never had this kind of embodiment haunting me in both my conscious world of reality and my subconscious world of dreams, as trans women would often testify. I didn't ever have scary moments in childhood of trying to remove my sexual characteristics in dangerous ways, like some trans girls experience. One psychiatric book talked about a trans woman that was asked the question, if you were stuck on a desert island for the rest of your life away from civilization, would you want to physically transition? She responded with a yes. Me, I would respond with a no. However, after understanding these answers, I had to discover for myself other answers that put me in an uncomfortable gray area. Even though I don't have these experiences aligned with trans women, do I believe I suppressed and ridden of these thoughts deeply out of survival instinct because of how my hometown environment socially constructed me? Did I really have the chance to understand my body in a culture that tried to erase my existence as a queer person? The scary answer to these questions is that I don't know. My lack of knowledge surrounding this is the essence of my genderqueerness, and I have chosen to be comfortable maybe never knowing the answers to these questions. With all this being said, do I believe later in my life that a desire for female embodiment will start haunting me in my conscious world of reality and subconscious world of dreams? I think not, simply because the notion of ever having that embodiment feels alien to me. But did I have moments in life where I believe my hormones to be an unnatural, unpleasurable growth? Yes. Do I also believe these thoughts were internalized as opposed to internal because my home life told me I had no future being gay, that I was being prayed for, that I would face job discrimination, that I couldn't be a part of manhood or fatherhood if I couldn't procreate? Yes. Did I have to leave my family behind for the time being because of this harassment and lying? Yes. Through the lens of music in my life, however, came the ability to heal, from the pain I knew all the way to the pain that confused me. My time in studying music is defined by reading music texts in college that describe music as a medium that informs the body and development of social participation. Seeing this concept addressed all the way from elementary pedagogy texts to musicological texts, and having that instinctive gut reaction of, oh my gosh, this is why I'm here. My time in practicing music was defined by realizing that, for the longest time before changing my gender expressions, the only place I was feeling connected to that image in the mirror was when I was holding and playing a saxophone during my sessions, no matter what body weight I was at. It was defined by realizing that the practice space pulled me out of my habit of disordered eating patterns, both when I was overeating and undereating. My social life in music was defined by the straight cis male senior drum major for marching band my first year of high school, wearing dresses occasionally with no self-consciousness. It was defined by me becoming senior drum major, going to band camp, and having my straight cis male friends wearing dresses with no self-consciousness for funny campfire skits. It was defined by finding so much sensitivity in men through music and how all these social interactions really added up to feeling comfortable with myself. My time in performing music was defined by finding my own individual voice in music. I struggled with the quirky background in pop music that I raised myself in and how that interfered with some of the development and technique. I struggled worrying I'd have to abandon this pop music to become a stellar art music performer, but I was also conflicted with this pop music being such an inspirational force for composing. I didn't want to leave it behind, but after I changed my gender expressions, I discovered that I didn't have to abandon it. It was simply that the quirky pop music performance standards were different and separate from the art music performance standards and what it communicates. When I started wearing different clothing, I was finally letting that pop music influence my social life the way I wanted it to. It helped me reach an understanding that the deep emotions in this music didn't have to be mutually exclusive from the deep emotions informing my interpretation and performing art music. My time in performing was defined by letting the influence of the transgender singer-songwriter Anoni wash over me. As I grew into my identity, I remember the shocked realization that we were writing songs about similar transgender lyrical subjects even before I knew about her or consciously realizing what I was singing about at the time. I remember seeing how we grew out of the same musical influences and feeling related to how she expressed her voice and perspective because of our similarities in life story. I remember her gradually becoming one of the most influential vocalists on my singing style. My time in performing was defined by discovering how I could create beautiful tone on the saxophone, reminiscent of saxophonists Otis Murphy, Timothy McAllister, and Joseph Whitco. How by simply putting on different clothing, the body tension finally eased away. I finally felt a clear perception and embodiment of my body as it is already. If there's one thing I can take away from all these collective moments and my decision to never pursue hormone replacement therapy or gender affirming surgeries, is that even though I sometimes experience body dysphoria and disconnect, music taught me how to take that energy of dysphoria and channel it into something beautiful, euphoric, and relatable to humanity. In my own personal way, I've come to understand dysphoria as two things. Number one, something that I internalized from unnecessary harassment in my life, and something that I don't consider purely internal. And number two, a creative energy that I can work with and re-internalize in ways aside from wanting to create something different on my body. Music taught me how to love my emotionality as is already. I wouldn't want this to be altered after looking at my life experience through hormones or anything, because I am proud of my emotional development through music. With whatever struggles I had with family, I know I can love them through the lens of music because they allow me to pursue this as a career. That school term was one of the most scary, exhilarating, and affirming years of my life. And if I didn't have music, I don't think I would have been able to face the difficult questions around gender identity and my experience with such precision. Evaluation without judgment was the music performance mindset I attribute to guiding me through the questioning, and if it weren't for facing my trans identity, I knew I wouldn't have been selected as a winner for a concerto aria, a competition that sent me into one of the most interconnected and spiritual performances I ever experienced in my life. The only questions I am left with is simply, how do I become this music teacher? How do we become these kinds of great music teachers that leave these lasting impressions on their students in the same ways as left impressions on me, on all of us? How do we foster this sense of development of the individual and the connection with the communal? I believe the answers for this come deep within, and that you have to continue to trust and develop your gut instinct as a teacher. I believe in setting up my classroom to reflect a fostering, accepting, inclusive environment with posters of favorite quotes, student quotes, my favorite musicians, band paraphernalia, and other pictures. I believe in providing resources for students that need them the most so that the musical experience can be equitable across my classroom. I believe in my role as a teacher as developing relationships with all my students, both within the class and outside of class. I also believe that there will be certain students that I will need more time and energy in developing relationships with, but it is my role to believe in all my students and their capabilities not only as musicians, but good human beings and citizens. Trusting in the strength of our content area is essential, and giving attention to all areas of the content will work wonders for our students. Trusting in that creative energy and the techniques and interpretations that are developed as a class. We must openly advocate for music education towards our students and find ways for them to be involved in caring about this advocacy. The greatest way to do this is to do what I am doing today. Share stories. Share anecdotes about the lasting impressions that music makes upon people. With so much conflict and struggles in our world, I have known countless stories about musicians who fought and worked against and around nervous disorders, psychological impairments, social and communicative disabilities, as well as socioeconomic, political, racial, ethnic, and gender barriers through the craft of music. This is an essential part of humanity that our school systems can never let go of. I'd like to thank you all for giving me the time, space, safety, and opportunity to present for you all today. Never forget about that simple gift of listening and about the transcendent power that music has on people. Thank you.